Hey folks, Sega Sonic fan here, and today we're doing some Game Gear recaps. I'm going to show you how to properly recap a Sega Game Gear, not doing it the quick and dirty way that really doesn't work. As you can see, I have a lot of Game Gears here. This is actually only a portion of the ones I'm working on, or have worked on. There's some pretty cool ones here. This one actually has the really rare Norix Japanese LCD upgrade that I had to send a sketchy wire transfer to get. And this one is the one I guess we can actually work on today. And what else can I show off here? This is actually one of my early prototypes for developing a power board. You can see all the jammed in DC to DC regulators I got going on in there. And it's actually got 2 cell phone batteries I salvaged. But it does have the Vialtim composite out, S-video out board, and I think that's actually just 15 kilohertz RGB. And it actually does work too. Just show you a game. This one actually also has an LED backlight upgrade. This one has, I have some fond memories with this particular unit. And of course the cartridge slot is finicky, but it's also got a glass LCD upgrade. Oh, can you see it though? Camera's not picking that up too well. Ah, there we go. World-class leaderboard golf is what you use to test because it's not a very good game. This unit, which is in progress, is going to be the most hacked Game Gear in the world. Look at that craziness. I know it looks crazy right now, but it's actually going to be really neat when it's all done. I'll upload pictures of it. But that has 4 motherboard upgrades. It's got the, take out the game cartridge, you can see. It's got the McWill LCD upgrade. It's got my new video and overclocking board, which is in the bottom here, which is on top of my Unigen board, which gives you Genesis controller support with auto fire and start button support, in addition to my Game Gear Powerboard Pro, which is over here, which gives you lithium ion power, as well as some other features. A lot of the features for this, by the way, are going to be switchless, so it's going to be a really sweet unit when it's all done. There's somebody from the SMS Power Forums I'm doing this for. They're going to be so stoked when it's all done. You can see all the ports. It's pretty much total insanity. Controller port, S-video, composite video, VGA, and 15 kilohertz RGB. It's also going to support PAL when it's all done. Doesn't look like much right now because it's a work in progress, but trust me, when it's all done, it's going to look real spiffy. Quick plug, of course. Before we get started here, I'm rambling, but I like talking about Game Gear. It's exciting. It's a great system. And if you're watching this video, you already know that and you care. This is my Game Gear Powerboard Pro. This is a PCB I designed that lets you connect, this goes in any Game Gear model, and what I don't have the, one thing not installed in this one is the plug, because I can put in it for a model, a 1 ASIC or a 2 ASIC, depending on the plug, so that's why the plug isn't there. But everything else is on here. This will give you the 34 volt outputs that you need for the LCD, as well as 5 volts, of course, and other voltages. It's got USB charging, and it'll also power your McWill. It's way more power output than a standard Game Gear. I think the last time I measured this, it's over 8 watts, where a standard Game Gear power supply will only put out 3. So it's almost 3 times the output power. Which is really nice for that system I showed you over there, where I've got 4 motherboards crammed in the thing, and I'm going to need more power. Yeah, it's a sweet board. I won't go into all the details here. I'll make a future video about that. That's just a little sneak peek. I'm not making them in large quantities yet. And this is my new video board. This is another sneak peek. This is a video and overclocking board that you have to have the McWill to use this because it doesn't have the RGB decoding. I might make a future board for that, but Vialtim, Tim Worthington already has one on the market. It's great. Vialtim is a fantastic guy, and go buy his board if you want TV output without a McWill LCD upgrade. But if you already have a McWill LCD upgrade and you want to add overclocking and PAL NTSC switching, as well as a really nice Chrominance, a chroma encoder, which adds composite video and S-video, you can get this soon. So with all that said, It is a beautiful gray rainy day here. Actually, it's kind of nice, especially for this kind of work because I want some good ventilation if we're going to be doing a Game Gear recap, and that's important. I'm also going to be wearing a mask. You can tell I have a bit of a cough. Going to be wearing this mask, though. Ideally, you could also wear one of the paint fume, real heavy-duty paint fume extractors that go down to like 2.5 microns like this. Yeah. Also, it's really important that you put your Game Gears on a Technics 1200 turntable because it looks cool. No, it's just ran out of room. And then also listen to KRS-One because he's amazing. Alright, so now to the actual hacking. If you stuck with the video this long and you're not annoyed with me, kudos to you. I always get a little bit annoyed when YouTube people post videos and they don't actually get to what they're talking about till 10 minutes in, but then I'm doing that very same thing, so, oh, shame on me. Okay, so things you're going to need. Going to need a breathing mask of some sort. It's a very good idea. Open window. It's great because it's cold out and it's raining, so the warm air in this room is going to get sucked outside. And you're going to need some desoldering braid. You're going to need some solder, of course. This is, what gauge is this? 23 gauge. 23 gauge is good enough for this job. I always go for the small stuff. It has a faster melting rate, and or I should say it melts at a lower temperature. And of course you're going to need capacitors. Here's a bag of capacitors labeled GG caps. And obviously you're going to need a soldering iron. There's some pretty good ones coming out on the market now that are really impressive. But I've had this old Weller WESD 5.1 forever. It's a workhorse, which is nice, but it is a little annoying. It makes a little noise. It's kind of annoying. I could do without. I actually have a video where I talk about getting rid of the little noise that it makes. And I also have a really nice WMRS pencil tip soldering iron. These are stupid expensive. I cannot recommend them at all because just this cord is $150. Oh, screw you, Weller. But fortunately, there's competition on the market now. So, you're also going to need some flux. This is, it's rubbed off. You can't see what it is anymore. This was Chip Quick. This is Chip Quick flux. There's plenty of substitutes you can get from overseas that are cheaper, that are just as good. So I wouldn't really stress about getting name brand, especially for this kind of work. It's not as important. If you're doing like 04, 02, 02, 01 type soldering, it's going to be a different story. And so you could see here I've actually pulled off the capacitors already, and I wish I hadn't for the purposes of this video, because then I could show you from the very beginning. But honestly, the way I pull out these capacitors is not really hard. Tweezers. Tweezers is another thing. Also, sorry, and getting wrapped up in circles here. But you can actually, if you're careful, you can just kind of, you can bend them off. Actually, no, I take that back. I wouldn't do that because you could lift up the traces. What I ended up doing, I think, if I remember, this was a while ago, I actually just went and clipped them off, some wire cutters. I might pull out more tools through the course of this video. I'm not doing a great job with the tools rundown because I'm not really used to that. I don't really make, the Let's Make Stuff website or whatever where they get the nice detailed tools lists. Maybe one day I'll do that. But anyway, yeah, you can just clip off the capacitors. Since these have been in storage for a while, I think before I put them in storage, the first thing I did was clip everything off. And that's because you don't want more electrolyte leaking out of the capacitors damaging the board. You want to get rid of essentially what's a time bomb inside this thing as soon as possible. Even if you can't clean it right away, especially if you can't clean it right away, you want to just pull off those capacitors, or cut them off rather, with some wire cutters. These also, I think the brand has been rubbed off, but you can find these around all over the place. They're great. Great little wire cutters. Also, thanks to The Art of Repair. The Art of Repair is a great video series on YouTube, and they really got me into making sure I use tip cleaner, tip tinner. And this helps make sure that your tips don't get oxidized and makes them last longer. And you just kind of dab it a little bit in here, and you can see how nice, or can you see how nice and shiny that is? I don't know. Real nice and shiny. And then go ahead and use, gosh, I forget what these are called, but this kind of braid scrape stuff. God, I'm sounding so ignorant right now. But you just use this stuff to scrape off the excess solder. There's a name for it. I don't remember what it is. It's funny, things you use every day. Almost every day. So yeah, that cleans your tips real nice, and that's important because you're going to be really doing a lot to your tips doing this kind of work. And the reason I want to show this, by the way, is because you see a lot of Game Gears that are recapped for sale on eBay for, you know, like $50 or something, and less sometimes, including shipping. And I think that's just ridiculous because the kind of recap jobs that they're going to be doing are not going to be the correct way. I see a lot of units that people send me that are just destroyed, and you know, there's a huge market now for a race to the, it's like a race to the bottom, really. And so I'm trying to educate a little bit to show people how to do things properly, and so explaining in the process why you should pay a little bit more for a quality repair. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to locate, obviously, all our capacitors. Now, I could pull up the Console 5 capacitor list. In fact, I should do that since I'm trying to make a thorough video. So I'm going to step away for a second. And I'm going to get my phone here. Ideally, if you want to donate any money to me to make better quality videos, feel free. Since I'm doing this for free with no Patreon or money or anything right now, there's no editing involved. I don't have a really great setup to show you screenshots and things like that. So, yeah, that's because this is free. So you can go to Console 5. They do have a lot of Game Gear kits for capacitors, as you can see here. And they do have a link to the wiki, usually, which is right here, the Game Gear wiki page. And it's a great resource. It's a great page. And I use this resource all the time. The capacitor list over here, you just click on that. You'll see the sound PCBs. I'm not actually going to do sound and power PCBs today. I don't think I'll have time, but we'll see. I've also recapped a lot of those already. But you can see, you know, and the soundboard is a little different in that it's surface mount components, surface mount capacitors, but you get the gist of it. Here's a single ASIC. By the way, what that means is that your board has one of these large square chips. This is a smaller, these smaller rectangular chips are a different kind. They're not really the brains necessarily, but the ASIC is the custom Sega chip. That's all custom programmed and has a bunch of stuff inside. And so that usually is how people identify Game Gears. You can also identify your Game Gear based on the board revision, VA, usually printed here, and you can see here it says VA1 837-9024. This is a VA1 single ASIC Game Gear, as listed here. If you have two of these large chips, like, I'll show you them. Here's another one with two of them. This is the twin ASIC. This is a VA0. This was the very first model when less stuff was integrated at the time. So, you look at your capacitor list here. Let's actually increase the brightness. That'll probably help. And you'll see you have a UF rating, that stands for microfarads, as well as a voltage rating. Now, it's pretty important that you stay within these parameters. It says here or 6 volts, and that's because the main power supply rail is 5 volts. So as long as you're within that tolerance, you should be fine for these capacitors here. But you never want to go with less voltage. That's always a really bad idea. That could lead to your capacitor actually exploding, which would be bad. So ideally, I would have all the capacitors laid out. I'll have to go through my bag and pull some out. But what I really want to show you is how to remove the corrosion and the acid from the batteries, or sorry, from the capacitors. Huh, I just did a battery repair recently. But forgive my rambling. Let's get my gloves back on here. So it also helps to have some isopropyl alcohol, and 91% stuff's always great if you have access to it. I actually had to special order stuff to get the 99% stuff. I couldn't find that at my local drugstore. But yeah, usually like a local drugstore, really any kind of large box shop like Target or Walmart or whatever will have that kind of stuff too. And I use this eyedropper because it really makes applications easy. I know a lot of people also use cotton swabs, which is great too. But I find this eyedropper is pretty great. And I also use like a horsehair painter brush. And what I do is you dip that in the eyedropper deal. And the first thing you want to do is you want to clean off this board. Now you can use a toothbrush as well. A lot of people do that. But I think this actually works a little better. It's a little stiffer brushes. Much too stiff for human teeth. And you want to go here and just clean off all that nasty leaking electrolyte. And you'll notice pretty quickly, depending on how much damage your board has, what an improvement this will already make. Each step along the way is going to be a significant improvement. And, you know, you're just here trying to take care of an old neglected unit. Or I guess in this case it's just it's like a suicidal unit. Taken out itself with its own capacitors. But sometimes you find some pretty neglected ones. I've seen so many crazy stuff inside of Game Gears. Cobwebs, and I think I've seen a cockroach in one before. Ew. All sorts of nastiness. I've seen, God, I got these ones from Brazil recently that were just rusted to pieces. Oh, God, those were sad. Over there, I guess they really try to repair stuff, and if it's really gone, they'll ship it to me. I'm not going to be buying broken stuff from Brazil anytime soon, that's for sure. So, you have your you know, you don't want to just get the parts too where just the capacitors are. You actually want to get the whole board. And, you know, feel free to get the pins here, especially around the ASIC, which are high density pins. Give everything a good scrub. Now, if I was going to be applying power to this anytime soon, I would take my hot air station and put it on a low temperature to dry out the isopropyl alcohol. But I don't need to do that because this is not going to be getting power anytime soon, and the alcohol will dry off far faster than that. Now, if this board was really nasty, this is actually in one of the best shapes of any kind of Game Gear board you're going to find. So I'm showing you this job with an easy system, actually. If it's a really nasty one, you're going to have to do that application a number of times. And now we're going to move on to cleaning the pads. That's the next step. I'm going to put my mask on first, and actually I'm going to go ahead and just dry out this alcohol. Save my iron a little bit of stress. So this is a hot air gun, pretty basic one. This is an AOYUE 6028. I've used this thing quite a bit. It actually holds up pretty well. Pretty happy with it. So the trick is you want to do a very low temperature. You don't want to melt any of the plastic. You don't want to keep it on very long or anything. You're just drying up the alcohol. This is mostly actually to save my soldering iron tip. And hopefully you can all hear me behind my mask. I'll try speaking up here. But just a quick, you know, quick little dry out of the alcohol we just applied. And let's see if we can get a good shot in there. Apologize, the video quality is not up to par here. Hey, par, making golf puns, sort of golf references. Yeah, leaderboard golf, stuck in my brain. So, yeah, hopefully you can see that. And actually, you know what I can do? I can zoom in. The power of technology. Bear with me, shaky camera warning. All right. So now you can see a little closer the pads here, and I'm also going to see if I can dim this light a little bit. Is that helping? Not really. Not really. Maybe if I turn this one off, is that better? Oh, that's way better. Okay. And you'll see, of course, you've got some of the what's left of the lead still attached to the pads. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in with my flux here, my nice syringe flux. I'm going to apply flux to each of the pads. And, you know, a generous amount. You don't need to really go light on this stuff. Especially because you're cleaning up so much nastiness. And I usually just start with one side of the board at a time, but I guess you could do both sides if you want. So, and then I'll get the one down here. I don't know if you can see that. I guess I should be using my left hand, huh? But, just applying the flux here. I'll try to do this left-handed for the benefit of the viewer. That'll be an interesting challenge. So once that's done, I usually take some solder, take my soldering iron, and get rid of those leads and try to burn off. Actually, what you're actually doing is vaporizing a lot of toxic electrolyte acid, which is why it's really important you have a mask and good ventilation. This is like toxic stuff, and it smells nasty. Another reason why I think these repairs should not be super cheap is you want to make sure whoever's doing them is using the proper safety equipment and not rushing and just breathing this stuff in all the time. I actually don't take these jobs on ever. If someone just asks me to do a recap, I won't do it because it's just not worth whatever, 30, 40, 50 bucks someone's going to pay me to do this for me to breathe in all these chemicals and crap on a regular basis. Now, if somebody wants me to do an upgrade to their system, and I forgot one of the pads here. Oh, no, I didn't. It's just translucent, hard to see. If someone's going to pay me to do one of my board installs and, wants a really deluxe system, I might do that. Though nowadays, I actually am very picky about which customers I take on because I have so much to do. I actually really like working with customers that are friendly and nice. Go figure. If someone just treats me like a sales clerk at the checkout line or, like another dude at Starbucks, give me my coffee kind of attitude, don't expect me to respond. I don't need your money that bad. But fortunately, most people in the retro community, especially the old timers, are just some of the nicest people you'll ever come across. And I'm delighted to do this kind of work for them, even when it's nasty stuff. You can see all that smoke, by the way, coming up from there. Hopefully the camera's picking that up. Some of that's the flux, but actually most of it is the leaking electrolyte chemical. Getting those off there. But yeah, I've met some really wonderful people. Overall, the retro community is just a really, really great community. And it's kind of cool that I get to be, I think of myself as a sort of a toy maker of sorts. Getting to make toys for people is pretty nice. So there's this one other, I'm moving the board over here because I forgot to get this one 100 microfarad. This is the power decoupling bypass capacitor here. Did I say that right? The power bypass decoupling capacitor. I talk too fast sometimes. So, yeah, this is the excitement of removing acid. Oof, you can see smoke still coming up there. Look at that, still coming up. That is nasty. That is nasty stuff. And so I only, from the ones I've seen, I only wonder what these cheapo ones on eBay look like inside. If they're even using flux at all, if they're even cleaning the pads at all, or if they're just, they're probably just, clipping off the capacitors, throwing new ones in. Bada bing, bada boom. But, because there's no way. How are you going to charge, $40 with return shipping and do these kind of repairs? Keeping in mind, of course, that you could replace all the capacitors and you could still have a dead system, depending on if the electrolyte reached the ASIC or damaged certain processors. If it damaged the CPU or corroded the VRAM. I mean, who knows? It could corrode the screen. I've had plenty of units where I do a full recap only to find out half the screen doesn't work, system doesn't power up, any number of problems. So I guess I'll go ahead and do this side now. This is the main CPU side. The left side is handling more of the high voltage stuff for the screen. But over here it's usually quite a bit easier because these capacitors are almost all just for bypassing the power rails, decoupling the power rails going to the ASIC. So they're usually like 10 microfarad, low voltage, not as prone to the really nasty leaking that the high voltage ones are. So go in here, pull off the stuff. And yeah, this is actually this unit is not very bad at all. This is a pretty, this one isn't so bad. So after I do that, the next step is actually going to be removing all the solder, including the solder I just applied, to make essentially a really fresh pad to work with. And so for the next step, I actually do come in and reapply more flux. Flux, by the way, improves the thermal conductivity of things. So it's very, very useful. Then I'll take my desoldering braid. Always good to have scissors on hand to cut off the part of the braid that's already been used. It's already absorbed a ton of solder. So I'll go here, put it flat. You want to use a chisel, a flat tip for this. There's actually a better tip, I forget the name of it, that is an even wider base that's kind of angled. That's also really good for this. And let's see, I'll try to do this at an angle you can see. But you want to place your iron flat, like that. And do not pull your iron away. You want to pull the braid away, not the iron. As soon as you remove the iron, you remove the heat. If you remove the heat and then you pull the braid, you can rip off the pad. It's not good. So yeah, desoldering braid's pretty cool stuff, and all it is just, wound copper. Creates a nice heating element for the solder to be attracted to, because solder is attracted to heat when it is hot. And go in there, and one of the ways you can tell is you'll get less and less of the really nasty smoke coming up. Some of this is still from the solder braid, but you can also hear it sizzle, man. When it's that electrolyte stuff, you can actually hear it kind of snap, crackle, and pop, and you don't want that either. So let's take a quick look at that. Now, I'll go in and just do a little bit of alcohol, even though I usually save this for last, but just to give you a rough idea. Now, this alcohol step is actually just to remove the flux. At this point, you should just be removing flux if you've done a good job. Might be some acid here and there, hopefully not though. Sometimes the flux can be a little more stubborn. Also, Sega puts glue under the capacitors as well, so sometimes you'll have a little bit of residue from that. But you see how nice that is? You see how this pad looks? Aside from being tinned, it looks basically brand new. And the same with this one. Real fresh, nice pads there. And they're nice and intact. I mean, a lot of times you'll find units where traces around them have been corroded. Parts around them have been completely destroyed. You'll see like half of a capacitor or half of a resistor. The metal on this top part will be corroded off or something like that. So like I said, this is a unit in pretty good shape actually. This is a pretty easy recap. Um, but as you can see, these things still take time, especially if you're doing them the correct way. So then I'm going to go in here, I'm going to put more flux on each pad again. Again, this is used to heat up the pads, and you really need to heat them up well, especially when there's acid over the pads, because your iron isn't going to always work its heat through that. But yeah, this is an annoying job. Oh, Sega. Your systems usually last a really long time. This is kind of the black sheep of Sega systems, as far as, you know, destroying itself with nothing happening to it. Usually it's like a PC Engine or something. By the way, you want to get your iron pretty hot when you're doing this, because you're going through the solder braid and, you know, chemicals and stuff. So I usually run mine at 730. I actually have it at 760 right now. You can see it's actually still struggling a bit on this pad. Also depends how much the pads are heat sinked to ground. Though there isn't like there aren't any very thick ground planes on the Game Gear for the most part. There actually is one under the LED that's pretty annoying, but for the most part you're pretty good. So then whenever you find that you know, this is getting full of solder, you just cut it off and keep going down the chain. These pads over here are real common culprits. These are the 50-volt caps. Rated at 50 volts, more likely handling the 34-volt power supply. And yeah, they like to leak. Dum 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 dum. But yeah, really, the SMS power forums and that community is a real great community. It's actually one of the best communities I've come across for in retro gaming. It's interesting when systems get really almost too popular. The amount of people that come and show up. Sometimes you get more trolls, more nasty people. But SMS Power folks have been around for a long time. They're real nice over there. Real programming wizards too, a lot of them. And they're always finding cool stuff over in overseas. There's a recent post showing a bunch of real cool finds from a Japanese Sega storage warehouse, including a floppy disk of Girl's Garden, which is kind of cool. That was Yuji Naka's first game, which is playable on the Game Gear, by the way. One of the reasons the Game Gear is one of my favorite systems, it really is one of my top 3 of all-time systems, is it's actually multiple systems in one. It's three systems in one. It can play SG-1000, which is Sega's first system, which is what Girl's Garden is on. It can play home Master System games, or Mark III games, and it can play Game Gear games. I don't know that many systems that can do their 3-in-1 like that, and if that wasn't enough, it's friggin' portable. So I've never understood why the Game Gear doesn't get that much love. I mean, I know people complain about the screen and the battery life. The battery life problem, of course, I just solved with my power board using rechargeable lithium-ion cells, so that's no problem for me anymore. And the screen, you know, has been solved more or less by the McWill mod, though I would like to see one that actually is native resolution, that doesn't have some of the issues that LCD has. But yeah, you know, even if those things weren't the case, I still think it's a wonderful system if you have just a stock one that you're recapping. I actually did not apply solder to this one. I missed this one in the first step. I'll go here and get some of this stuff peeled off. You're also going to have to go through at the end of this and examine it to make sure that no contacts got bridged. You got to make sure none of your SMD parts got bridged in this process. It's a pretty involved, you know. It's not exactly mentally super involved when you're doing this kind of work for this particular kind of work, but it is labor intensive, more than some people realize. Shout out to Bach on the SMS Power forums. Such a cool guy. He's a 8-bit SMS legend. People celebrate his birthday. They call it Bach Day over there. It's pretty great. And shout out to What's Up, WASUP on SMS Power. He's developing some pretty cool boards over there. He's helped me out in the past. And who else should I give shout outs to? I don't know. But there's been some nice people, some real nice people over there. So yeah, that looks pretty good. We forgot one pad over on the very bottom under the RAM chip here. That's one of the 10 microfarad bypass ones, so it's not super nasty usually. I'm not cool enough to put techno music in the background while I do repairs. Some people do that and do cool editing, but you just get a dog barking in the background. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. Might do a little more cleaning and flux on this one. Sorry, out of the video shot here. Focusing too much on the work and not on the video. It's probably a good compromise. I mean, ultimately, whoever's going to get this Game Gear is going to appreciate that. Alright, so when that's all done, we'll do one more alcohol clean, and then ready to solder in capacitors. Look at how nice that one's looking. A little bit of the red glue left over, but I'd say it looks pretty nice. Giving this Game Gear some love. Sorry, doing this off camera again. Whoops. So a lot of times I'll hold it real close to the edge of the bristles to get a little more tension in there. And you don't have to worry about like damaging anything when you do this. I don't think I've ever damaged anything with a brush on a PCB. I guess if you had some real messed up traces and pads, but you'd have to have them pretty horribly corroded for this to do damage. And like I said, a lot of times you can do multiple applications of this. I actually might do one more. Get that leaking. And the reason for this is to make sure that, you know, this Game Gear isn't going to just break again in 5-10 years, or even 1 year. If you leave all that acid on the board, you're really asking for it. So, yeah, take a look at that. I'm pretty happy with that. You got a little bit of the red glue residue, but all these pads look real healthy now and are ready for getting those capacitors added. I'm not going to add all of the capacitors for this video, but you know what I might do actually? So this is actually a motherboard that, let's see if I zoom out here, that actually recapped and then didn't work. So I might actually pull the capacitors off of that one, or find one that's an even better sort of capacitor donor, so I don't have to go through all my bags and cut out all the new capacitors. So, because I don't know how much of an educational benefit that's going to be. But the one thing I will show you, which I think is a nice thing to do when you're doing high quality recapping, is you want to use, if you can, try to use ceramic capacitors when possible for low voltage, especially for low voltage power decoupling. That's what they're really good for. And so I'm going to use my parts bin here, my SMD caps here, and I'm going to take out, this is a 16 volt rated 10 microfarad capacitor. This will actually work as your bypass capacitor for your whole power section, your whole CPU section, I should say, not really a power section. And they're nice and tiny, which, if you can solder tiny stuff, is really great. And they're less prone to failure, longer lasting, just better characteristics overall. Electrolytics are actually terrible as far as capacitors go, as far as their characteristics are. Across the board, the only reason electrolytics are used, as far as I know, I don't think there's any actual beneficial property of electrolytic that isn't better in another capacitor. The only reason electrolytics are usually used is because of their low cost. That's it. So talk about a good reason to use anything but, especially if you're going to this kind of work. You know, saving 50 cents or whatever is not that big of a deal. So we'll open up our page here to double check our capacitor placement. And I wish this was all in one image. I wish they had the listing and the image together, but you know, it's a really helpful thing either way. So I can't complain too much. Thanks to Luke here, Luke Sandell, for making it for us. And we see we have C14, C42, and C11 on this side. So we go back. C14, C11, C42, just like I thought, they're all 10 microfarad decoupling capacitors. Now see where it says or 6 volts? Well, that's what my ceramic caps are here. So instead of using some possibly leaky, future leaky electrolytic capacitor with a larger footprint and worse characteristics, I'm going to go ahead and use this tiny, little tiny 0805 10 microfarad SMD capacitor, ceramic capacitor. And now that I've taken all the nastiness off the board, I'm going to use my better iron. Oh, by the way, after you do this, one step, you definitely want to clean your tip. Absolutely. Do not use expensive tips for this particular job. You will destroy them quickly. It's another reason this job is not as cheap as it's advertised to be sometimes. So let's see if we'll go in here and just show you a little bit of the SMD cap application. It's pretty simple stuff. This isn't going to blow anybody's mind. I'm just going to solder in the capacitor here. I'm going to use my nice iron tip now that the board's clean. I like this tip a lot. It's nice when I don't have to pay for it. It's nice. These tips are 30 bucks a piece. That's kind of ridiculous, if you ask me, but here I am using it and enjoying it, so they know their audience. And you want to get a nice, large, good solder connection there. See if you can see that. So there's one of them right there, C11. Good to go. I already placed the other two up here, so we'll move up over here. If we can see them. Yep, right there. And And if you want, you can apply solder to one pad first. That usually makes it easier for SMT stuff. Dooby-dooby-doo. Dooby-dooby-doo. Alright. And these are the easy ones. When you don't have to deal with electrolytics, life's easier. Life's easier with SMD. Usually. If it gets too small, 0402s are a headache. And the smaller than that, 0201s. So those are all in there nice. Now that everything's real nice and you already know the pads are in good shape, you can opt to leave the electrolyte, or sorry, not the electrolyte, the solder rosin that remains, which is the brown stuff around those caps. That's really optional to remove. It's not going to damage anything. Factories leave it on all the time. So, it's your call on that one. Now, for the other capacitors. Oh, my back's hurting. Let's see how much we can do with this. Dooby-dooby-doo. So the other ones are a bit more annoying because there's just more of them. I do like to use SMD caps for the .47 or 47, or so that's 470 nanofarads at 50 volts. Let me see if I actually have those. I might actually have those in my capacitor bag here. I'm going to zoom out here and let's see. So here's some 100 microfarads. Now these can be 6.3 volts as well because they're again just bypassing the power rail over here. This one I actually did not get fully. Go ahead and get in there. I actually have another work light I might pull over here. Doobie-doo. Yeah, it's nice. Good to have good lights. So, yeah, that capacitor is only, in its entirety of use, it's only going to have 5 volts. This one right here. So you can put a lower value there if you want. I might just put a 16 volt one there anyway because that's what I have on hand. Let's do the 68 one. Now I actually might go ahead and re-tin the pads before I place the capacitors. A lot of times that's pretty helpful. So we'll take our phone again, and the 68 microfarad, which is C47. C47 is usually towards the middle of the screen. Yeah, C47, it's that one right there towards the middle of the screen. The one under it, C49, is usually 100 microfarad. And sure enough, it is. That one says 4 volts. I always make sure everything in here is at least 6 because you have 5 volt power supply. And why not? You know, it's like not super expensive to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and re-tin these. And take our capacitor. Now it helps if you can bend. You want to cut them like so. You don't want to cut them too short. And then bend them down at an angle. And so that way they'll sit pretty flush. Sometimes you need tweezers to do this effectively. But not always. And you know, it's up to you if you really want to make it look super pretty as far as fitting it in the outline profile that's on the board there, or you know, bending it in just the right symmetrical shape. You know, sometimes it's nice to do, but also, how much time do you have to make things look pretty that are going to be inside of a case anyway? You know, there is a difference between making a capacitor look symmetrical and doing a really bad job of removing leaking battery acid. So I'm going to go in here. I have a 33 microfarad now. This is a 6.3 volt. Let's see if that's enough. The 33 one's usually the one sort of near the bottom of the cart slot. C1. And sure enough, C1 is the one down here in the bottom, just like I thought. Doing this from memory, because I've done it so many times. Some of this is definitely from memory. And of course your polarities. You really want to make sure you get your polarities right. Number one tip, number one thing when you do this kind of stuff, any recap job, I cannot stress this enough, number one thing, more than anything else you'll see in this video. After you recap something, go through and triple check all the polarities if it's electrolytics. Ceramics don't have polarities, so you don't do that. But whenever I'm replacing electrolytic capacitors, I triple check the polarities. It's so easy to just accidentally get one off and blow up your friggin' thing you're repairing. Go slow. Double check your work. It really, really pays, that extra step. Seems simple, but I'm telling you, it will save you much headache, much heartache. Learn from my mistakes, people. And other people's mistakes. It's a pretty common mistake. So we got our 33 in there now. And I'm going to do the hundreds. You can use a nice pair of snippers here to cut off the leads of your capacitor if you like. Also, you got to make sure you're stocking which, you know, the capacitors you're running out of and all that biz. It's a job. What can I say? It's not the breeziness that people sometimes make these things out to be. Oh, just do a capacitor repair. We see all the time. They're like, well, you know, getting close to an hour here now. Like, sure, I was talking for some of that, but still. By the time I'm done with this will be well over an hour's labor. Plus parts. It doesn't count parts ordering and cost of materials and replacing damaged tools from electrolyte acid and soldering iron tips and all that stuff. You got to factor all that in, you know. These tools are not cheap. And, you know, ordering new flux and new solder, you know, not super expensive, but it adds up. It's a factor. So this is, oh, what am I doing? I'm talking and not paying attention to my work. So this is the 4.7 microfarad. Put that in a different spot, actually. It's supposed to be rated at 35 volts. Is this rated at 35 volts? Yep, it's rated at 50 volts. So we're in good shape. That's C45. C45 is down here, and you'll see it's labeled right there on the outside. A lot of times you'll find the glue that Sega puts on the system will cover up the polarity plus sign, so it's important to double check that with the nice guide from console 5 there. Also, thing to watch out for, this circular pad here actually gets pressed down by some plastic. There's some plastic that goes over this, and that's for the back of the button. And so you want to, I usually just angle this slightly to keep it from getting messed up in the height clearance there. So that's important. Otherwise, you won't be able to close your Game Gear shell. You'll be like, why isn't this closing? I did this recap and WTF. So we got our 4.7 microfarad. Memory serves. I'll have to do a 22 microfarad. That's right. Let's see. Aha. So I got this stuff. Ceramic. 0.47 microfarad, 50 volts. Look at that. This is going to be so much easier to install, and it's not going to leak like crazy. and it will make life easier. So I'm going to go here, comes in these little reels, gently pull away 2 of them, you'll hear them drop on the board. And I'm doing this from memory. Obviously I'm going to check my work later, but C54 and C55, let's double check. That's what I'm calling it out. C54 and C55, 0.47, 50 volts. So we're going to go over here, we're going to tin those pads. Just going in here and oh, this one's being a butt. A lot of times you can use the chisel tip if the pads are spaced close together. You can heat them both up at the same time, which is a real great way of aligning an SMD cap. Sometimes I get a little anal, I actually try to make those symmetrical as well. But you don't need to do that. So, yeah, I got those ones in. And let me see if I have, what else we got? So I got some 100s at 16 volts. Let me see if I can find one at 6.3. Already did the 4.7 microfarad. Oh my gosh, and keeping in mind, this is just the main board. After this, you got the power board and the audio board. Here we go, here's 100 UF, 6.3 volts. I'm going to go ahead and put that where the 4 volt one is. I only have one left anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I could estimate this would be a 2-hour job. I'm doing the audio board on top of this with the SMD caps. Again, not factoring in, that's not factoring in doing all the parts ordering, the BOM ordering, as it were. Bill of materials is what BOM stands for. And let's go in here, place this guy. You know, so you got a 2-hour job. You got a possibility the system's not even going to work after you do that job. And then you got bill of materials ordering and the actual equipment and parts that you're using. And by parts, I just mean, you know, flux and stuff like that, capacitors. And then you're going to sell this thing for 50 bucks, 40 bucks? Not me. Not worth it to me. You have to buy the system too. The systems are not cheap these days. They used to be a lot cheaper, but they're getting up there now. Working, even a dead Game Gear is 15 bucks these days. I guess if you find one locally, get a better deal than that, hopefully. C43 is going to be the 22 microfarad. Makes sense. Also, this is the one ASIC. Different models will actually have quite a few more capacitors than this one. I know the VA, I think it's the VA4, has a crap load of capacitors. It really sucks working on that one. It also sucks that the McWill LCD is not compatible. Same with the Vilton boards. They're not compatible with the later model ASIC Game Gears. I wonder how many people found that out the hard way. It's not their fault. Those ASICs are not well documented, and I guess they might have a different way. I think of the different way they do the serial RGB data. It's harder to convert it to analog. Requires a different circuit. And yeah, so you got to be careful buying Game Gears. If you buy a super late model, like I think even the Majesco, you can't. You actually can't do the LCD upgrade. Kind of a bummer. Dooby-dooby-doo. So again, we're angling this one. You see I'm angling it. It looks kind of funky, but that's to keep it away from the bottom, from the back of the button, so that the Game Gear can reach it. Or sorry, the plastic can reach that backing. I wonder how many shoddy modders are actually just cutting that plastic. I'll show you if I can find a back. Here's a back here. See this guy and this guy, these two here. And there's the third one. These three posts. They are to support when you're pressing buttons down. Those three exposed copper pads. Those three circular copper pads. So you can't cover those up. You won't be able to close your Game Gear. All right. I think we got 2 more to go. C4, that's what I thought, 10 microfarad. And 1 more 100. All right. Let's do this. After I put these last 2 in, I'm going to have to review everything and make sure nothing got shorted. Make sure it passes a solid visual inspection before I apply power. I have no idea what's going to happen after I apply power. Could have done all this for nothing. Though the nice thing is, if you do all this and it doesn't work out, you can just pull out the capacitors. They're already pre-cut, essentially, to size, as it were, and you can put them in another Game Gear that you have that is dead, which I would have done for this one, but for the purposes of this video, I decided to kind of, do it step by step, as if you were just, didn't have 7 Game Gears in your room right now. Oh, my back is hurting. That sucks. Gotta stop soon. All right. So we got that 100 microfarad one in the back there. I do apologize for the video. You're getting a nice video of my hand most of the time. I'm trying to be better about that. But I have a really wonky setup. If anybody wants to donate money again, let me know. You can message me. And I can make better quality videos. I'd love to get a microscope. And I can do live streaming videos as well. If anybody's interested in that, do it live and answer your questions as I do this. But I would need a little bit of money for that. I'm not going to do that for free. At least not anytime soon. I've got too much work to do. And, try to help out where I can. If I could pay my rent and all that jazz, I wouldn't... if that was all covered, I would do this all day, every day for free. Because I like doing it for people. Spreading the Sega knowledge. But I got bills to pay. Alright. So, that is our fully recapped right side of the motherboard. Let's see if we can zoom in here. Ooh, camera's not liking that. What about there? Want to do that? Nope. Well, I'm just looking at this right now on my tiny camera screen, but hopefully when I blow it up, it'll be in 720 or whatever. It'll look pretty good to people. So, yeah. Quick rundown. 100 microfarad, 22 microfarad, 4.7 microfarad, 68 microfarad, 100 microfarad. These are your 0.47s at 50 volts. Those are the ones that really fail. Ones I find that fail the most are these two and this 22 up here. And then you got a 10 microfarad over here. And then over here you got a 10 microfarad and 10 microfarad and a 10 microfarad. I only got 3 minutes left on battery apparently. Let's see if I can actually plug in my charger. because I'd like to fire this up and see if it works on camera before my camera dies. Or I should say the battery runs out of juice. People say electronics die, kind of anthropomorphizes them. It's kind of silly. Let's see. Of course, like everything I own, I hacked my camera to accept a USB cable to charge. However, it might not charge while it's recording. We're about to find out. Nope. Alright. Gotta do this quick. Got 2 minutes left. That's a bummer, though. So what do you know? The camera battery died. But my cable was working fine. It's just that my foot hit the the surge protector, and it was shut off. So, can't show it to you all in one video. This will have to be a two-parter now, where I show the Game Gear firing up. But first, I'm going to finish doing the quick visual inspection. Looks good. Forgot I could take off my mask after I stopped all the soldering, so you can actually hear me a little better. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So, take my Game Gear, powered my GG Powerboard Pro, power this thing up, and see what happens. But where's the fun in that? This is my new board, new-ish board that I designed, the GG Powerboard Pro. And it's great. It's so great for testing these boards that I recap as well. I find it seems to be a little safer than the stock Game Gear Power Board. I mean, I made it safer. I put fuses and stuff on it. And I think the power circuitry that I used also just has short circuit protections and stuff that the Game Gear one doesn't. And of course capacitors that aren't decades old. Always a bonus. So I'm just soldering the last connector that I did not connect to this. And this is my spare board. I have not done a lot of thorough testing with this one, but if I remember correctly, it's working very well. Might actually go ahead and fire it up without the Game Gear connected just to double check that. It took me a long time to design this thing, but I'm really happy the way it turned out. It's definitely, I mean, I designed it, right? So as Socrates would say, I'm drunk with a paternal love. A little bit of philosophy from you. That's from Phaedo or whatever, Phaedrus, Plato's dialogue. Yeah, so now we got our connector there. It's important for, you know, connecting things. Go ahead and take a lithium-ion battery, plug it in. This is a larger one, just because it's what I have on hand. The ones that go in the Game Gear are slightly smaller footprint. And this has been unplugged and plugged in so many times, it's actually showing a little bit of wear on the wires. But take this, hold the button down for 2 seconds, and look at that. It powers up. So now I'll go ahead and just check the voltages real quick, and then I'll hook it up to the Game Gear. And then we'll know if this recap was successful. So let's go ahead and check here. We got 34.2 volts. Perfect. You need that 34 volts. We got 5 volts. So GG Powerboard Pro is working. It's got fuses and everything, so if something goes awry, it will not blow up the Game Gear. It should not blow up the Game Gear. So now, take our Game Gear, put in a crappy game, plug in our power supply. Sometimes as a extra safety precaution, I'm like 99% sure I put that plug in at the right orientation, but I'm going to go ahead and just double check to make sure that the ground is the same as the ground on here, and that 5 volts is the same as 5 volts. Just as an extra super safety precaution. And yeah, so the polarity, the pin, everything's correct on that. So let's fire it up. Got a power light, but we're not getting anything as far as video. Oh, no we are. Just contrast is turned down. So we have a working Game Gear now. Woohoo! This audio board's not hooked up. Now, obviously, to complete this, you would need to recap the audio board. Maybe I'll do that in a future video. I'm sure there's videos out there showing that stuff already. But here we are. It's a full recap of a Game Gear that has been sitting in my parts bin for way too long. And is now working. One of the reasons I wanted to do this, by the way, is all my Game Gears are LCD modded. And I want to give this guy a whirl. I might do some modding to the TV tuner. Got some cool ideas for that. Hopefully this, this two-part video was helpful to you. And I'll put these up for sale eventually. I got too much work to do right now. And I'm only doing specialty orders where I install these. I'm not selling them as a kit yet. There's a few reasons for that. But for those that really, if you really want one and you want to order a few mods from me, we can work something out. But if you're just like, not too interested in that PowerBoard Pro, then no worries. You don't need to message me. And I'll put it up for a kit for sale in the future. So to turn this off, all we do is hold the button down, and that's it. Quick note to all you Game Gear modders: don't pull on the cable when you're unplugging your power connector. I've had so many experiences now where it's just not a great crimped connection, and you know, that and just the age of it, you will start to have intermittent connectivity issues here, and it's no fun when that happens. Always pull from the white plastic. And it's a little more annoying, but it's what keeps your connector working. So it's worth it. As a last step, whenever I do any sort of solder work, and again, this is thanks to The Art of Repair, it's a great video series, go ahead and use your tip cleaner to give your soldering iron tips like a little bath for all their hard work in recapping your Game Gear. That's it for this video. This is Sega Sonic Fan, signing out.